Welcome to episode 9 of today's Candor. I'm your host, Barika. Thank you so much, as always, for taking the time to tune in. This episode is literally a random thought and just a topic that I thought would be fun to discuss. I'm going to go ahead and dive right into it. So to give you all some context, my honey and I were watching a documentary on Netflix called Dirty Pop, the boy band scam. I was going to watch this documentary eventually. I just didn't know when I would get to it. I don't love TV. I can watch it if I'm really intrigued by a show or movie, and I love my reruns of old shows, but I'm not really a TV person. So I knew I would get to it eventually. So when he threw it on, I was like, okay, let's go ahead and watch it. So as it's, first coming on and the intro is on and all, he's like, I know you like the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC when you were younger. And I was like, yes, absolutely. I still listen to them to this day. And so we didn't get into too much of it right then because, of course, we're trying to pay attention to the show. So after the show goes off, we had a quick conversation just about me liking Backstreet Boys and NSYNC when I was younger and, these other bands that I used to listen to that were similar. And I told him, we got into a conversation just about, my parents having a very different upbringing from me. They raised me very different in the sense of not the home training piece. The home training was the same, but just in the sense of where they raised me, the environment I was in, things of that nature. And so we got into this conversation just about sometimes having to maybe explain to your parents or your friends or just other family members or maybe somebody that you were dating about why you like a certain thing. And in this case, like a different genre of music than maybe what they think, air quotes, what you're supposed to listen to, right? So my parents, of course, I'm just to give a little background. My parents, of course, wanted my brother and I to be very diverse. We were raised in the suburbs, which it was just a different environment from where my parents were brought up. But my parents, are in their 70s. My mommy is 70 and my dad is 72. And so, of course, they have lived through segregation, and the music that they love is different from me and my brother, but not even different. Let me use a different word. It is me and my brother have a more diverse taste in music, if you will. And so while my parents, of course, came up in that era with Motown and the oldies but goodies, things of that nature, they raised us on that music, my brother and I love that music. That's always on a playlist. But I also like groups or bands like the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, Nickelback. I like Avril Lavigne. So, that's what I wanted to listen to along with Motown and the oldies but goodies. And so this is a conversation that him and I were having about, just those differences. And I found that the older I was getting, and my parents would look at me, of course, like when you have music that's playing in stores, they're looking at you like, this song? You listen to this. So I thought this would just be a fun topic to discuss. And although, my man and I have total different upbringings. We are from two different places. And we're also 9 years apart. I'm 9 years younger. So that difference in the generations. But so I love everything from, like I said, Motown, oldies but goodies. I like some country. I like some rock music. 90s R&B is probably my favorite genre. If I had to just narrow it down, and if somebody said you have to pick one, I love 90s R&B. It's like a go-to. But then I'm also like, I'm torn because I love Motown. Like Marvin Gaye, come on. And then I love other music, just different eras. I love Phyllis Hyman. She's a go-to on my Apple Music. So just all these different things. But I was telling him that in my past, I've had to explain how, like, to maybe someone else who I was dating, I had to explain, why I liked a different type of music. If it wasn't hip hop, or if it wasn't R&B or something of that nature, or if it wasn't Motown. And I've had to tell people in my past, definitely part of it is because where I was raised and who I was raised around. And I'm perfectly fine with that. So I but my parents, even to this day, like if I'm in the grocery store with my mom, she'll be like, "Barika, what are you humming?" If I'm humming the song that's being played on the radio in the store. But my parents are very aware, of course, that my brother and I are very diverse, and they know, of course, who they raised us around, the environment that we were raised in, who we went to school with, just all these different influences, if you will. But it's something that I love because it helps it just opens your mind to different things. I never want to be in my own little bubble. And so I appreciate the fact that my parents did raise me in a space that was much different from where they were raised. And I always reminisce about the ice cream socials that my mommy would take me to when I was in elementary school. Like 2 weeks after school would start back up, they would have ice cream socials, and it would be for like 2 hours from maybe like 6 to 8 in the evening. And that was one of my favorite parts of returning to school. Not only, of course, going back and seeing your friends and, maybe seeing some people that you didn't see over summer break, but also, the ice cream, of course, but it was just cool with the music. And that's the music that was playing. It wasn't a lot of 90s R&B. It definitely wasn't hip hop because, of course, they had to keep it PG because we were in elementary school. But it was a lot of the NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys and some of the other groups that I'm not going to say I'm not familiar with. It's just I don't remember them because those were my two favorite. And then I loved Celine Dion. I was listening to Christina Aguilera, Britney Spears. And then the older I got, I started to mix a little more in there. Oh, but Spice Girls, let's not forget them. So, but the older I got, I was mixing in some Nickelback and Avril Lavigne. I loved Avril. I still listen to Avril. All those that I just named, I still listen to them. So I figured I would do this topic because I have some friends who have said they've had to discuss this with their parents, and parents are looking at them like, what are you listening to? Like, that's not what I grew up with. And just sometimes parents they don't get it until you remind them like, hey, mom and dad, I'm 30 something or however old you are, especially parents who maybe had you later. Like I said, my parents were pushing 35 and 37 when I was born. And now that they are 70 and 72, of course, I've been an adult for a while now. So they understand, okay, we know who Barika is. And of course, same thing with my brother. My brother is going on 40 in a couple months, and they get it. They know. But I've heard this topic come up about, what are you listening to? And that's so much different from what we listened to when we were kids. And my mom will tell you in a minute, if it's something, she will listen to some different music, some different genres, but she'll tell you in a minute when she gets in the car, what's this we're listening to? Please change this. And I just know from the time when I first started driving way back to now, I know exactly what to and not to put on when mommy gets in the car, because she's going to tell you, I'm not listening to that. Or what is this? Can you put on some Temptations? Can you put on some Earth, Wind and Fire? Which I love. I love both of those groups. But I will flip it in a minute. I will listen to some NSYNC, and then right after that, talk about I want to listen to some SWV or some Aaliyah. So my Apple Music is filled with a whole bunch of different genres. Literally, I will say that probably the only thing I can't or I just doesn't tickle my fancy. I can't get with the heavy metal. And if it's too country, I can't I can't just sit there and listen to that. But I figured this would be a good topic to kind of just dive into because it also this isn't it just doesn't not even just about music. It just so happened, like I said, I was watching the documentary about the boy band scam, but it goes into just different things, like the styles of dressing. Like some of my jeans, I like it to have fringes in them. And my dad, he doesn't ask me anymore. But when I first started wearing those types of jeans, he's like, Barika, do they really have to have fringes in them? And I'm just like, Dad, like, it's just cute. So just certain things that when your parents, especially if your parents if they've had you later and they come from a total different generation, it's not that they're necessarily looking at you funny. They might be looking at you funny, some. But I feel like sometimes it's just them trying to gain a better understanding and just really understanding who their child or their children are. But I also think it's great to be surrounded with, like, for the most part, my friends and who I associate with, they are diverse. Some of them are not going to take it back to NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys, but for the most part, they are diverse. Even if not in their music taste, in other aspects of life. But I'll always say, especially if it's your significant other, like, please take me as I am, because I'm not always going to listen to one thing. And I'm so glad I was telling my man that as well, that I'm glad I didn't have to explain why I like NSYNC or the Backstreet Boys or Celine Dion. He was like, well, why would you have to explain that? Like, it's music. That's your taste. And yes, I'm glad he feels that way. But I told him in my past, I have had to tell people, whether it was a guy I was dating or, maybe a new friend or whatever. And they're like, oh, what are you listening to? It's music. Get into it. So I thought that in my mind, I figured there would be other people who are having these conversations, whether it's with parents, family members, your friends, your significant other, coworkers. But it's also to say, never let anyone make you feel like because you like something and it may be different from where you come from, different from an upbringing. Never let anyone make you feel like you have to change or switch up your uniqueness. And I spoke about this in one of my earlier episodes. Never let someone make you feel like you have to change that because that's not where they're from. We can all teach each other something. That's all interconnected. Like I said, this isn't just about music. It's also the principle that even though we come from different places and spaces and environments and upbringings, cultures, all these things, I will say music and food they're probably the two things that bring us together, but music is like a universal language. And it's one of my favorite things. Like I said in the beginning, I'm not really a TV girl. Oh, it has to be really intriguing, or I like my reruns. Good Times, The Jeffersons, and yes, I have an old soul, but Jeffersons, The Good Times, I Love Lucy, What's Happening. I love reruns, but music is my go-to for sure. And like I said, it's a universal language, but never let someone make you feel like, oh, I shouldn't listen to this, or this type of music is because they don't like it, I can't like it. For me, I'm going to always be respectful. Like I said, when my mom gets in the car, I know there's just certain things she doesn't want to listen to. So I'll turn on, some music that I know is going to tickle her fancy, some Motown, some oldies with goodies. My parents, they like some of the music after Motown. They like some of the 70s, 80s, that R&B, that 90s R&B, that New Jack Swing, early 2000s. But once you get a little past that, my parents are like, it's a no for me. But I can't lie. That's not my cup of tea. This new music now, this new era of music, except for a few of the artists, it's not my cup of tea. So I just thought that I'd do a random thought about this topic. But yes, if you haven't watched that documentary on Netflix, I thought it was pretty cool because I definitely learned some stuff that I didn't know about how they were scheming and conniving with the boy bands and whatnot. So that Netflix documentary was called Dirty Pop, the boy band scam. So get into that if you're interested. Don't let anyone change who you are. Stay unique, stay you. And until next time, stay safe, stay candid, and please continue to follow, like, and share.